A hero's heart, buried deep beneath layers of city grime and a veteran's unseen scars. He was a ghost haunting the familiar corners of an American city, invisible to most. But a battlefield echo still resided in the set of his jaw, and the way his eyes, though dimmed by hardship, would sometimes scan the horizon. One sun-drenched afternoon, a little girl, innocence personified, knelt beside him. In her small hands, a piece of paper, a child's vibrant drawing of a caped figure, unmistakably him, with 2 words scrawled in uneven crayon, "My hero." This single, simple offering, an act of pure childhood faith, would rip away the veil of his broken present, exposing a truth of battlefield sacrifice so profound, so devastatingly personal. It would shatter your understanding of who walks among us and rekindle the enduring spirit of a nation that refuses to forget its own. His hidden sacrifice, once revealed, will surely break you, before it mends you with an unbreakable hope. His name, though he rarely spoke it, was Marcus Thorne. The city was his harsh guardian now, its concrete his mattress, its biting winds his unwelcome blanket. Each dawn, he'd stir for first commuters, the damp chill of the pre-dawn air familiar ache in his bones. His few possessions were stowed in a battered olive-drab duffel bag, its contents organized with meticulous, almost reverent precision that was a phantom limb of a former life, a life of order, of discipline, of belonging. A neatly folded flag, though he never displayed it, lay at the very bottom. Sometimes a sudden screech of tires or a door slamming shut too loudly would cause his head to snap up, his hand instinctively twitching towards his hip, his gaze sweeping for threats that existed only in the haunted corridors of his memory. These were reflexes forged in crucibles of fire and fear, now tragically out of place on these indifferent streets. He never panhandled, never made eye contact unless absolutely necessary. He existed on the city's periphery, a silent observer of lives lived in fast forward, families laughing as they passed, their joy a bright, painful stab, businessmen marching with purpose, their crisp suits a stark contrast to his tattered layers, young lovers holding hands, their easy intimacy a world away from his profound isolation. He'd watch them, a hollow ache echoing in his chest, the American dream he'd once fought to protect now a cruel mirage, shimmering just out of reach. He was a soldier still, but his war had followed him home, waging a silent, relentless siege against his soul, leaving him a forgotten sentinel on a forgotten street. Young Lily Albright, a 7-year-old spark of sunshine with perpetually scraped knees and pigtails that danced with an infectious energy, often past Marcus's alcove. Her mother, Sarah, a single parent juggling 2 demanding jobs and the endless anxieties of making ends meet, would usually guide Lily past with gentle but firm hand. Sarah's heart held a complex mix of sympathy for the man's evident suffering and a protective caution born of urban realities. She'd whisper a quick prayer for him sometimes, her own struggles making her acutely aware of the fragility of fortune. But Lily, through the untainted lens of childhood, saw beyond the grime and the sorrow. She'd noticed how he'd once carefully nudged a fallen bird's nest, with a single, sleeping chick, back into the low branches of a struggling city tree. She'd seen the fleeting, almost imperceptible softening around his eyes when a friendly dog trotted up to him, tail wagging, before being pulled away by its owner. In Lily's world, still painted in the bold, primary colors of unambiguous morality, heroes weren't just the muscle-bound figures in her comic books. They were the quiet doers of good, the protectors of the small, the kind. So, when her second-grade teacher, Mrs. Davison, a woman who believed in nurturing empathy as much as literacy, gave the class their weekly art assignment, draw your everyday hero, Lily's mind didn't conjure firefighters or astronauts. It conjured the image of the sad, quiet man on Miller Street, armed with her creation, a bright, if slightly wobbly, depiction of Marcus standing tall, a golden sunburst behind his head like a halo, and the emphatic, purple crayon words, "My hero," beneath. Lily felt mission. The next afternoon, sunlight filtering through the city canyons, she spotted him. Pulling her hand free from Sarah's startled grasp, she marched with the innocent determination only a child can possess. Sarah watched, her breath catching, a flurry of apprehension, and a strange surge of pride fluttering within her. "This is for you," Lily announced, her voice clear and sweet as a bell, as she extended the drawing. Marcus, jolted from a weary reverie where shadows of the past danced with the gnawing pangs of hunger, looked down, first at the tiny outstretched hand, then at the girl's earnest upturned face, her eyes shining with an unwavering conviction, and then at the drawing, his own likeness, filtered through a child's pure vision. The vibrant colors, the bold declaration, "My hero." A violent tremor shot through his arm, making his callous, dirt-stained fingers hesitate before gently taking the offered paper. His touch, rough as it was surprisingly tender against Lily's soft skin. He stared at the drawing, the world around him receding to a dull hum. Words failed him. A tidal wave of emotions he'd spent years, a lifetime it felt, building ramparts against shame, bitter regret, a startling, painful ache of warmth, and something akin to recognition crashed through his defenses. He looked from the drawing to Lily's expectant gaze, and then a single, traitorous tear escaped, tracing a surprisingly clean path down his grimy cheek. He swiped at it angrily, a harsh, choked cough racking his frame. Sarah, witnessing this raw, unguarded moment from a few feet away, felt a profound tightening in her chest. This wasn't the numb indifference she'd steeled herself to expect. This was a man breaking, ever so slightly, in front of her eyes. Sarah couldn't get the image of Marcus's face out of her mind. The stunned vulnerability. The single tear he'd tried so desperately to hide, it played on a loop. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Sarah snapped a photo of the drawing, with a mix of hesitation and a feeling she couldn't quite name, a desire to share this poignant moment, perhaps. She posted it to the Oakwood Community Spirit Facebook page. She wrote, "My daughter Lily gave this drawing to a homeless man on Miller Street today. She called him her hero because she says he has kind eyes. I don't know his story, but his reaction, it was incredibly moving. It just made me think, maybe we don't always see the heroes living right among us or the battles they're fighting." She half expected a few likes, maybe a dismissive comment or two. Instead, the post began to resonate. People shared their own fleeting observations of the quiet man. A few recounted small, unnoticed acts of consideration they'd witnessed. Of course, there are the usual cynical voices, quick to warn against romanticizing homelessness, quick to judge. But then, a comment appeared that shifted the trajectory. It was from Emily Carter, a tenacious, slightly idealistic young journalist at the Oakwood Chronicle, the town's struggling but respected local newspaper. Emily was constantly on the hunt for stories that dug deeper than city council squabbles or the annual pie contest. Stories with genuine human interest, stories that could spark a conversation or even change. Lily's drawing, Sarah's heartfelt caption, and the raw emotion it hinted at. This was a thread Emily felt compelled to pull. A forgotten man, hailed as a hero by the purest of hearts. There was a story there. She was sure of it. Emily believed this was more than just a transient feel-good moment destined to fade from the town's social media feed. This had the potential to be something significant. The following morning, armed with a printed copy of Lily's drawing, a thermos of hot coffee, and professional but deeply empathetic resolve, Emily located Marcus. He was exactly where Sarah's post had indicated, a still figure against a grimy backdrop of urban decay. As Emily approached, his eyes, which she'd seen described as kind by Lily but now appeared guarded and intensely wary, flicked toward her, cataloging her with a swift, unnerving appraisal that spoke of someone long accustomed to assessing potential threats. "Excuse me, sir," Emily began, her voice intentionally soft, non-threatening. "My name is Emily Carter. I'm a reporter with the Oakwood Chronicle. I saw a post online about a drawing a little girl gave you yesterday." Marcus's posture, already defensive, seemed to harden further. His gaze drifted past her, fixing on some distant, unseen point on the opposite wall. Silence stretched. Emily, sensing the formidable walls around him, pressed gently. "She called you her hero." Her mother said your reaction really touched her. It seems to have touched a lot of people in Oakwood. She held out the copy of Lily's drawing. Marcus's eyes darted to it. A barely perceptible flicker. Was it pain? Annoyance? Regret? Before he looked away, his jaw tight. I'm no hero, he finally rasped, his voice a gravelly whisper, raw from disuse and harsh living. You're wasting your time. Just leave me alone. Emily recognized the deep-seated defenses of a man who had been hurt, and hurt badly. Pushing would only make him retreat further. I understand you might not want any attention, she said, her tone calm, respectful. And I won't push you. But Lily's mother, Sarah, she thought your story, whatever it might be, could be important. Sometimes people just need to feel seen, truly seen, for who they are, not just what they appear to be. For several days, Emily made a point of passing by. She wouldn't always try to speak. Sometimes she'd leave a fresh coffee and a wrapped pastry nearby, retreating to give him space. Sometimes she'd just sit on a nearby bench, ostensibly reading or working on her laptop, creating a quiet, unobtrusive presence. Slowly, painstakingly, like coaxing a wild, wounded animal from hiding, fragments of conversation began. Marcus spoke, not himself, but the city, the rhythm of its sanitation trucks, the behavior of the pigeons, the way the light changed across the brickwork throughout the day. Emily listened patiently, absorbing these small offerings, recognizing the intelligence and articulate vocabulary that lay beneath the rough exterior. She learned his first name, Marcus. He spoke of the biting cold of the previous winter, the oppressive heat of the summer just past, but never, ever, of where he'd come from or the cataclysm that had led him to this desolate existence. His past was a locked vault. Then, one chilly afternoon, as Marcus shifted to pull his thin jacket tighter, a small, incredibly worn, faded green military-issue wallet slipped from an inner pocket and fell silently to the pavement. He snatched it up with a lightning-fast, almost panic movement, but not before Emily, her reporter's eyes sharp, caught a fleeting glimpse of a creased, sepia-toned photograph tucked inside one of its plastic sleeves, a much younger Marcus, his face unlined, hopeful, a proud smile lighting his features, dressed in a crisp army uniform, his arms slung around the shoulders of another smiling soldier. The image was there and gone in an instant, but it was a vital spark. You served? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper, careful not to spook him. Marcus froze, his entire body going rigid. The brief, almost imperceptible thaw in his demeanor vanished, replaced by an icy hostility. That was a different man, he bit out, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. A different life. It's got nothing to do with anything now. But the slip, the involuntary glimpse into his protected past, had undeniably cracked the facade. Emily knew with a sudden, gut-wrenching certainty that his service was not just part of the story. It was the very core of it. She began her research with just a name, Marcus Thorne, and that fleeting image of an army uniform. She meticulously scoured online military archives, veterans forums, anything that might yield a clue. The digital footprints were maddeningly faint, almost deliberately obscured, as if Marcus Thorne had systematically erased himself. But Emily was driven by a growing conviction, a feeling that this man's story was not just one of personal tragedy, but one that held a mirror to the nation's conscience. While Emily painstakingly pieced together the fragment of Marcus's past, the ripples from Lily's drawing and Sarah's heartfelt Facebook post were subtly transforming into a current within Oakwood. Small kindnesses began to appear near Marcus's alcove with increasing regularity. A warm thermal blanket, new wool socks, bags containing sandwiches and fruit. Even a few dollars tucked discreetly under a rock. Some townsfolk, emboldened by the online conversation, would pause, offering a hesitant smile, a quiet good morning. Marcus received these offerings with a gruff, almost pained humility, his discomfort with a sudden attention palpable. Yet an almost imperceptible degree of the harsh, defensive tension in his shoulders began to ease. He started to meet their gazes, just for a second, offering a curt, barely audible, appreciated. Not all responses were positive. A couple of nearby shop owners grumbled about his presence, attracting the wrong element. And online, a few commenters continued their chorus of judgment. But the tide had undeniably turned. Lily's innocent gesture had rendered him visible, and in that visibility, some of Oakwood's residents were beginning to see not just a homeless man, but a man. One blustery late afternoon, as Emily sat on her usual bench, making notes, a sudden violent commotion shattered the relative peace of the street. A young woman, struggling with a teetering stroller piled high with shopping bags, cried out in shock and fear. A wiry figure had sprinted past, snatching her purse from her shoulder, and was now weaving expertly through the startled pedestrians. People gasped. A few shouted, "Stop him!" But the thief was a blur of motion, agile and fast. Before Emily or anyone else could fully process what was happening, Marcus was on his feet. He moved with a sudden, shocking burst of speed and grace that seemed utterly incongruous with his down-and-out appearance. He didn't pursue the thief directly down the crowded sidewalk. Instead, his eyes, now sharp and intensely focused, had instantly assessed the situation. With a voice that brooked no argument, a voice that carried the unmistakable ring of command, he bellowed, "Halt! Police! On the ground, now!" The thief, momentarily stunned by the authoritative tone, hesitated for a fatal fraction of a second, glancing back over his shoulder. It was the opening Marcus needed. He'd anticipated the thief's most likely escape route, a narrow, trash-strewn alleyway between two buildings, and in 3 swift, powerful strides he'd cut him off. He didn't tackle. His movement was more precise, a perfectly timed leg sweep that sent the thief sprawling, the purse flying from his grasp. Marcus calmly retrieved it as a uniformed police officer, who'd heard the commotion and Marcus's command, sprinted up and took control of the dazed and now cuffed culprit. Marcus simply walked over to the young mother, who was trembling, trying to comfort her crying child, and handed her the purse. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Then, without waiting for a reply, he retreated to his alcove, melting back into the shadows, as if the entire incident had been a figment of the onlooker's imagination. Emily, along with a dozen other witnesses, stared, mouths agape. This was no ordinary vagrant. This was a man with undeniable training, with deeply ingrained instincts. The incident, quickly relayed across local social media, only intensified Emily's resolve. Who was Marcus Thorne? The wallet, the command in his voice, the tactical efficiency. The pieces were starting to form a picture, and it was one of extraordinary discipline. The definitive breakthrough Emily had been searching for arrived not from a database, but from a human connection. She'd been painstakingly cross-referencing the name Marcus Thorne with Army units known for heavy deployment during the peak years of conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. Dead end after dead end. Then she shifted her strategy, searching for unit citations or news clippings related to significant engagements, specifically looking for acts of bravery attributed to soldiers whose names were partially obscured or only identified by rank. She stumbled upon a commendation for a Bronze Star of Valor awarded to a Staff Sergeant M. Thorne, U.S. Army, 10th Mountain Division, for extraordinary heroism during combat operations in Kandahar Province. The details were frustratingly sparse, heavily redacted, but it was a solid lead. Emily then reached out to a national veterans advocacy network, providing the limited information she possessed. Days of anxious waiting followed. Then her phone rang. It was a case manager from the network, a retired command sergeant major named Henderson. His voice was gravelly, weary, but kind. "Thorne, Staff Sergeant Marcus Thorne, 10th Mountain." Henderson mused. "Yeah, that name. The circumstances, they ring a distant bell. Good soldier, from what I recall. Tough situation followed him, I think." Henderson, after some persuasion from Emily about her intentions, made a few calls. He eventually connected her with a former member of Marcus's platoon, David Kowalski, universally known as Ski, now a firefighter lieutenant in Chicago. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she dialed Ski's number. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious, professional. When Emily identified herself and explained very carefully why she was calling, mentioning Lily's drawing, Marcus's current predicament on the streets of Oakwood, Ski's professional guard crumbled. There was a long, choked silence on the other end of the line. Sarge is homeless. Ski finally managed, his voice thick with disbelief and a dawning horror. No, that ain't right. That can't be my Sarge. Once he found his voice again, Ski began to talk, and the story that poured out was one of unimaginable courage, gut-wrenching sacrifice, and heartbreaking neglect. It was a searing hot afternoon in a dusty, forgotten village in the heart of Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Their platoon, on a routine reconnaissance patrol, walked straight into a meticulously planned, L-shaped ambush. RPGs shrieked. Machine gun tracers ripped the air, the world erupting into a maelstrom of dust, smoke, and terror. They were pinned down, taking casualties almost immediately. Their platoon medic, a beloved young man named Doc Ramirez, was one of the first hit, a severe leg wound. Sarge, Marcus, he was everywhere at once, Ski recounted, his voice cracking, the years falling away as he relived the horror. He wasn't our medic, but he'd done every advanced combat lifesaver course the Army offered. Always carried double the medical gear. He dragged two guys, Casey and Diaz, under heavy fire into this little ditch. Started working on him, cool as you please, bullets snapping over his head. Ski took a shaky breath. Then PFC Miller got hit. Young kid, barely 19. He was way out in the open, caught in a crossfire, screaming for his mom. God, it was awful. We all knew. Nobody could get to him. It was a death sentence. But Sarge, Ski's voice dropped to a hush. Marcus, he just went, didn't say a word, popped a smoke grenade, and before the smoke even bloomed, he was running, zigzagging through that hell. He got to Miller, bullets kicking up dirt devils all around him, and started immediate aid, trying to stop the bleeding, talking to him, keeping him conscious. The enemy, emboldened, began to advance on their exposed position. The platoon leader, a young lieutenant, made the agonizing call. They had to pull back, consolidate, or they'd be completely overrun. We were screaming at Sarge on the radio, yelling for him to get back. That Miller was too far gone, but he wouldn't leave him. He just kept saying, working on him, almost got it. Ski paused, the silence heavy with the weight of memory. Then the mortars, they started walking them in, closer and closer. One landed damn near on top of where Sarge and Miller were. A huge blast, smoke, debris. We thought they were both vaporized. When the firefight finally lulled enough of them to counterattack and regain the ground, they found Marcus. He was semi-conscious, dazed, his body protectively covering PFC Miller. Miller was alive, barely, but alive. Marcus had shielded him from the worst of the mortar blast, taking a hail of shrapnel in his left leg and across his back. He also had a severe concussion, an injury that, in the frantic aftermath and focus on Miller's critical wounds, was deemed less immediately life-threatening. He'd saved Miller's life, and the lives of at least 3 other men that day through his actions. But that, Ski explained, his voice now raw with a grief that transcended years, wasn't the end of the sacrifice. That was just the visible part. Marcus was evacuated, treated for his physical wounds, awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for his conspicuous gallantry. But the invisible wounds, the traumatic brain injury from the mortar blast, the relentless PTSD from that day, and countless others, those festered, largely undiagnosed and untreated in the overburdened military healthcare system of the time. When he finally came back to the States, he wasn't our Sarge anymore, Ski said, a profound sadness in his tone. He got quiet, so quiet, haunted. He started pushing all of us away. The guys he'd bled with said he didn't want to drag us down. Marcus had tried to navigate the civilian world. He'd attempted a series of jobs, but the persistent, agonizing headaches, The fractured memory, the sudden, inexplicable rages followed by crushing depression, the vivid, terrifying nightmares. They made a normal life impossible. His marriage, already strained by deployments, eventually shattered under the weight of his unseen demons. He lost contact with his family, then with his former platoon mates. One day, he just vanished. We looked for him. Emily, I swear to God, we did. Ski's voice was choked with guilt. For years, we'd hear whispers, rumors he was struggling, bouncing around. But we never imagined this. He was a goddamn American hero. He saved my life. He saved Miller's life. He saved so many. And the system, I let him fall through the cracks. Emily felt a cold dread, mixed with burning anger and profound sorrow, settle in her stomach as Ski finished. This was a hidden sacrifice, not just a singular, explosive act of bravery on a distant battlefield, but the slow, agonizing erosion of a good man's spirit in the lonely aftermath, while those he saved went on to build lives, families, futures, perhaps never truly grasping the full, devastating price their hero had continued to pay day after day. She had to speak to Marcus again. This time, she didn't just ask tentative questions. Armed with the painful, powerful truth, she approached him with a newfound solemnity. She found him staring at Lily's drawing, which he'd carefully propped against his duffel bag. Gently, respectfully, Emily laid out what she had learned. She told him about her conversation with Ski, recounting the details of that horrific day, the lives he'd saved, the official citation for his valor. Marcus listened, his face an unreadable, stony mask. But Emily noticed his hands, resting on his knees, were clenched so tightly his knuckles were bone white. A muscle twitched erratically in his jaw. When she finished, a heavy silence descended, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. Then Marcus finally, slowly, raised his head and looked directly at Emily. His eyes were not cold, not hostile, but filled with an ancient, bottomless pain, like staring into a well of grief. They were good men, he whispered, his voice raspy, barely audible. Every single one of them. They deserved to go home. They deserved to live. He didn't deny Ski's account. He didn't need to elaborate. His haunted gaze, the raw agony etched in every line on his face, confirmed everything. Emily knew with absolute certainty she had her story. A story of incredible courage, of profound, ongoing sacrifice, and of a nation's collective failure to honor its covenant with one of its finest sons. Emily wrote the article with controlled fury, fueled by a potent mix of indignation and deep admiration. She poured every ounce of her skill and empathy into it, weaving together Lily's innocent act, Marcus's current plight, and Ski's harrowing, heroic account. She titled it simply, starkly, Our Hero on Miller Street, The Hidden Sacrifice of Staff Sergeant Marcus Thorne. She detailed his distinguished service, his extraordinary valor during the ambush, the specific lives he had saved at great personal risk, and the heartbreaking, solitary decline that followed. She made sure to include a high-quality image of Lily's crayon drawing, the innocent catalyst of this entire unfolding drama. The story ran as a lead, above the fold on the front page of the Sunday edition of the Oakwood Chronicle. Online, it was shared, then shared again, exploding across social media platforms with astonishing speed. The town of Oakwood, and soon people from neighboring communities, then across the state, and even nationally, were first stunned into silence, then moved to tears, then galvanized into action. The homeless man whom many had passed by with averted eyes, or perhaps a fleeting pang of pity or even scorn, was revealed to be a decorated American war hero who had laid down nearly everything for his country and his brothers in arms. The community's reaction was immediate, visceral, and overwhelming. There was shame, undoubtedly, for their collective blindness, for allowing such a man to suffer in their midst. But overriding the shame was an immense, surging tide of pride, a profound compassion, and an urgent, desperate desire to somehow make amends, to right this terrible wrong. The newspaper's phone lines were jammed. The mayor's office was inundated with calls. Local veterans organizations found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of offers to help. Donations began to pour in, not just money, but clothes, furniture, offers of free dental and medical care, job opportunities, even offers of housing. The local VFW Post 789, whose members, many of them combat veterans themselves, had read the story with a potent mixture of fury at Marcus's neglect and a deep, resonant respect for his selfless service, immediately mobilized with military precision. This was one of their own. He would not spend another night on the streets. Within 48 hours of the article's publication, Marcus Thorne's life began a seismic shift. The commander of VFW Post 789, a gruff but kind-hearted Vietnam veteran named Al, along with Ski, who had driven through the night from Chicago the moment he heard the article was out, found Marcus in his usual alcove. Marcus was bewildered, almost fearful by the sudden attention, by these men who looked at him with such respect and concern. Al didn't mince words. "Sergeant Thorne," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "your watch is over. We're taking you home." They found him a clean, quiet room at a local motel first. Then, within days, a small, furnished apartment secured by the VFW, a retired Army doctor, specializing in TBI and PTSD treatment for veterans, read the article and immediately volunteered his services free of charge. A local garage owner, himself a Marine veteran of Desert Storm, called Emily, then the VFW, offering Marcus a job. "I know good men when I see 'em," he'd said. "And I know what discipline and honor look like. He's got a place here if he wants it." Marcus was hesitant, almost paralyzed by the sudden, overwhelming flood of kindness and attention. It was a jarring, disorienting contrast to the years of agonizing invisibility and indifference. But he saw the unwavering sincerity in A.L.'s eyes, the fierce loyalty in Ski's gaze. He saw Lily Albright, who, accompanied by Sarah, came to visit him at the VFW post. Her smile radiant as she launched herself into his arms for a hug that felt like the first true anchor he'd had in a decade. "I knew you were a real hero," she whispered into his shoulder, her small voice fierce with conviction. The town of Oakwood, determined to formally acknowledge its debt, organized an official ceremony to honor Marcus. It wasn't a flamboyant parade, but a deeply heartfelt gathering at the community center. The hall was packed to overflowing. Veterans, many in their dress uniforms adorned with medals, stood shoulder to shoulder with local families, town officials, and a visibly emotional Emily Carter, her reporter's notebook present but largely forgotten. Sarah and Lily Albright sat in the front row, Lily clutching a new drawing from Marcus. Marcus himself, clean-shaven, his graying hair neatly trimmed, stood tall in a new dark suit the VFW members had insisted on providing. The haunted, hunted look in his eyes hadn't vanished entirely. Some shadows, he knew, would linger forever, but was significantly softer now, tempered by a fragile, nascent hope. The mayor delivered a moving speech. Several veterans shared poignant testimonials about service and sacrifice. Then Ski, his voice thick with emotion, spoke of Marcus's unwavering courage, not just as a soldier, but as a friend. When it was finally Marcus's turn, he approached the podium with a slow, deliberate gait. He looked out at the sea of expectant, compassionate faces, his gaze lingering on Lily's bright, shining eyes. For a long moment, he seemed unable to speak, the lump in his throat an immovable obstruction. He cleared his throat once, twice. I'm not much for speeches," he began, his voice still bearing a trace of its former roughness, but gaining strength with each word. "For a long, long time, I thought I was forgotten. I thought what we did, what so many of us went through, I thought it didn't matter any more to anyone but us." He paused, visibly wrestling with his emotions. "That little girl," he said, his voice cracking as he nodded towards Lily. "She saw something in a broken man that I couldn't see in myself, that I'd forgotten was ever there. Her drawing, her calling me a hero when I felt like less than zero. It was like a light switched on in a very dark room." He took a deep breath. "This town, all of you, you've done more than just give me a roof and a warm bed. You've given me back a piece of my soul. You've shown me that I wasn't alone, even when I thought I was. You've reminded me what community, what the American spirit, truly means. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. The applause that followed was thunderous, a sustained, rolling wave of warmth, respect, and profound gratitude that washed over Marcus Thorne, not as a symbol, but as a man, a brother, a hero welcomed home. Marcus Thorne's journey back from the brink was not a miraculous, overnight transformation. It was a slow, arduous path, marked by good days and bad. But now, he did not walk it alone. With the unwavering sleeves rolled up support of the Oakwood community and the steadfast companionship of Ski and his VFW brothers, he began to truly heal. He found a quiet satisfaction working at the auto garage, the tangible labor of his hands, the smell of oil and metal grounding him in the present. He diligently attended his therapy sessions, slowly, painfully, unpacking the years of trauma he had shouldered in silence. He reconnected, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, with other members of his old platoon, their bonds of shared experience and brotherhood proving to be an unbreakable lifeline. He became a familiar, respected figure in Oakwood, no longer the homeless hero, but simply Marcus, a man rebuilding his life with quiet dignity, a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Lily and Sarah remained a cherished part of his new life, their Sunday dinners becoming a comforting ritual of laughter and belonging. Lily's original drawing, now carefully framed by Sarah, occupied a place of honor on his small apartment wall. A constant, vibrant reminder of the innocent act of faith that had pierced through years of darkness and set in motion a chain of events that reaffirmed the very best of what America can be. His story became a touchstone for Oakwood, a lasting lesson in compassion, a stark reminder of the often invisible sacrifices made by those who have worn the nation's uniform, and a profound, sacred duty to look beyond the surface, to see the humanity in every soul, and to extend a hand to those who have fallen in the shadows. It was a powerful testament to the enduring, indomitable American spirit, a spirit that cherishes its heroes, believes fiercely in redemption, and understands that the heart of its strength lies in its communities, and in the simple, profound truth that no one who has served should ever be left behind. And it all began with one little girl, a handful of crayons, and the unshakable belief in a hero hidden in plain sight.